Guess what, everyone? EA just canceled another game.
Oh, and it's Star Wars this time.
Yeah, apparently we're not going to be getting that open world title anymore.
Hot take.
As many gamers out there know, EA is one of the biggest companies out there making video games, and they also happen to be the holders of the Star Wars franchise rights for video game development.
I thought they just monetized things.
Yeah.
They're not just the monetized people?
Oh, they are the monetized people, but they also happen to be the people that are making or at least producing these games. Now, over the past couple of years, there have been a ton of really cool video games that have come out with the Star Wars license. Most of those were actually created by another company called LucasArts, but we're going to talk about that right now. EA has been making their own games, and it has been a mixed bag.
Right. So since 2013, EA had the license to basically take Star Wars, and I believe other than Lego Star Wars, they were the only folks making Star Wars games proper. So we've been seeing a lot of titles from them. They were working on the Old Republic, Battlefront, the original Battlefront, which was divisive because some people said it didn't feel like a complete package when it was released. There's Galaxy of Heroes, which was a cell phone and whatever iPad game.
You know, one of those games.
Battlefront 2. And one of the things that we were seeing with a lot of these games, again, I mentioned monetization, a lot of these seem like they were created specifically so that folks would continue to come back to the game, and continue to fork over cash into games.
It's not just good enough to sell a video game that people enjoy and want to go back to by themselves. Because, hey, you know what's funny, EA? I'm going to say this for a little bit, but there are issues with the games that were just released that we just talked about, and primarily my problems are with the Battlefront series that EA took, I'll say, but. Now we have an even bigger issue, and that is that there was a video game they were supposed to be making that apparently just got canceled.
It was a game that a lot of people were excited about, and Visceral Games had started kind of sort of working on this a while ago. Visceral Games is the studio known for Dead Space. They were working on a third-person linear experience, and this was being headed by Amy Hennig at one point from Uncharted fame.
Yeah, she actually wrote the original Uncharted games, and she's like a really fantastic writer.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of people were like, okay, this is going to be a third-person linear action adventure game like Uncharted. Uncharted Star Wars, this is going to be really cool.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
Yeah, and when I think of Star Wars, I think of a cinematic experience. Uncharted is very much a cinematic experience. So.
Yeah, like you can go back several years and talk about Jedi Knight or the Dark Forces series of games.
Yes.
There are a bunch of really good standalone single-player Star Wars games that are fantastic. However, like I mentioned previously, most of those games were developed by other companies, specifically the folks at LucasArts. So when LucasArts kind of went away recently after the whole merger with Disney and Lucasfilm, it kind of sucked because there was some really amazing, talented people there, and the properties for their games went off to EA, and EA was basically like, well, we can make whatever games we want, but lately. The problem is EA isn't the same company they were in the past, and I think they were given the franchise or like the IP a little bit too quickly. Yeah, so we saw recently that EA, they released a statement, something like, okay, no, people don't want single-player games anymore. That was a statement that they made in, 2017 or so. Yeah. And so, we've slowly seen sort of single-player experiences get kind of pushed out of the Star Wars IP specifically. So Visceral Games was working on this third-person linear action game, and then in late 2017, EA basically canned that project. So, Visceral Games is no longer a thing. They closed down Visceral Games. Yeah. Oops. I mean, how can you trust this company at this point? They've done this to so many companies they've purchased.
We say this so many times, Shane, but do you remember Westwood?
I remember Westwood. I loved Westwood.
Okay.
Every time they get a company, they don't know how to manage them and they close them down. It's like they can't trust the company to make the games they bought them for. Like, you know what I mean? If I bought the people that made, I don't know, Pringles, I would not be like, hey, stop making Pringles. Make Pringles with DLC. No, you wouldn't do that. You would just say, keep making Pringles. You were good at making Pringles. They don't grasp it. Make sandwiches now. Well, why would you do that?
you have to pay extra for the Pringles man's mustache or like
You
a goatee.
totally
Anyway,
that's how
so
EA would do it.
Visceral Games, they were dissolved, and some of the work that they did was picked up by EA Vancouver.
Yeah.
And then they started creating this game that we're talking about today, this open world Star Wars game. So there were high expectations for this title, and a little bit of negativity as well, because what EA was saying about this Star Wars game, this open world Star Wars game, is that you could be a bounty hunter, you could be whatever, just the filth of the galaxy, and you could go to different factions and things and complete quests. It sounds cool in that it sounded like a very expansive experience. They wanted people returning to this game, which, when I hear that from EA, it means there's going to be some sort of monetization to keep people coming back and like some sort of addictive quality to it, because I immediately side with they are the Sith of the gaming world.
Oh my God, yeah. See, here's the problem, folks, right? When they go to make a game, I know a lot of people out there, well, it must be difficult to work with a Star Wars IP. And you know what? It probably is. There's a lot of rules, there's a lot of regulations, there's things that they want to keep to make the Star Wars story as relevant to the universe they're making as possible. But with that difficulty, you also get an ease of things. You don't need to do tons of research on backgrounds for characters and stuff, because you're inventing new character stories, but you already know what the world is. You don't have to redesign everything. Star Wars exists as it exists. In the past, we actually got games like Knights of the Old Republic and stuff like that. Now, those games go all the way back in the past before any of the major movies had come out. So the concept of those games is that they're basically telling how the world was established from all the way back in the past, where the Jedi Order and everything kind of formed. That's a very different story, a different idea. But what we were apparently going to be getting here was a modernized Star Wars universe kind of idea, so that you could explore that range of the universe.
I had a sneaking suspicion that the game that you just described, this expansive world, it was possibly EA looking at games like Grand Theft Auto Online and saying, that's a big expansive universe that they're creating with Grand Theft Auto Online. People are returning to it. There's a monetization platform there. Let's take a beloved IP and make that. Let's make out like Star Wars GTA.
Yeah, why not?
Like that would be... Yeah.
Go to Hoth, go to Tatooine. I mean, what would be... There would be no issues with that. I honestly think that, look, the way... Now, okay, there is issues, because if EA were to do it, they would have screwed it up. Let's make that clear. I know everyone's out there like,
so we should be happy about this?
Yeah, give EA the benefit of the doubt. No, I'm not going to. They've crapped on so many games I like that I could have liked even more had they not been involved. See, the reason why Grand Theft Auto 5 works is because EA didn't make it. If EA made it, the online portions of Grand Theft Auto would have been completely terrible. There were aspects of Grand Theft Auto Online, especially in the fifth one, where there were a lot of issues with the way that it was designed and how it came together, but Rockstar worked hard to make sure it worked. They didn't charge for expansion packs. They kept giving you content away for free, and if you wanted certain elements in the game, you could pay to get them, but they always had a wall there to make sure people understood that if you were to play the game, everything was accessible as long as you played it long enough.
Yeah, so let's say there was less of a wall between like the monetization and like, because you could surpass whatever barriers there were to getting this car.
Yeah, the shark cars and stuff like that.
Or whatever. So this game was in development for a long time. I'm assuming that they were going for something that was like a GTA Online sort of thing to keep people coming back, but without the accessibility that you just mentioned to the monetization elements that were there. So we heard that this game is canceled, and Jason Schreier from Kotaku basically he wrote an article fairly quickly and said that the reason why they pulled the string on this whole thing was because this game wasn't going to be coming out anytime soon, and EA was canceling this game in order to work on a more contained and a quicker to develop Star Wars experience. Possibly something like a third-person linear action game. I don't think they already canceled a smaller experience, and now they're saying they're canceling this bigger experience so that they can make like
what's the point anymore? You can't keep canceling games that are so close to another game that you already canceled. Like you're right. You're absolutely right.
We don't know that like they want to make a smaller experience. We don't know that it means that they're going to go back to a linear third person, but that is when I think of a smaller like Star Wars experience, that's immediately what I go to. Like I want a movie, like a film like experience with a story, because that's what we love. We love like the characters and the story of Star Wars. We don't just love, hey, that's a bounty hunter. Like I want the whole mythos.
Sure.
You know?
And you know what? Something to keep in mind, too. Apparently, Jason Schreier also did an article recently where he stated that, hey, when EA established this relationship with the Star Wars folks, or the owners of the Star Wars IP, which at this point was Disney, they had a different person in charge of all that stuff at EA, and he left. So ever since he left, all the things that they agreed to have been in flux.
Yeah.
Look, there has been rumors that ever since Battlefield 2 came out, and it was just
Battlefront.
Battlefront. Let me make that clear. Ever since Battlefront 2 came out, the good Battlefront 2, a lot of people, you know, I got to explain this, don't I? because it's not just there are 4 Battlefront games, but they're called Battlefront, 2, and Battlefront 2. Idiots.
2 are classics.
2 are classics. Look, here's how this works. There was a Battlefront that was released by LucasArts, and then there was a Battlefront 2 that was also released by LucasArts. There was other companies involved too. It's not just LucasArts doing that. But those games were good. People still go back and play those games as much as they can. In fact, Battlefront 2 on GOG.com continually gets played by people all the time, regularly. Now, EA made their own Battlefront and then a sequel to that one and called them the same titles because they've got no brains. They thought that they were going to live off the property of that. But here's what ended up happening. The first Battlefront was a lackluster experience, missing so many things that made the original series good. It had neat ideas there, but it was really, really weak. It was a full-price game with very, very much nothing inside of it. And they actually had the audacity to charge for an expansion pack to get people to go get the things that should have been included in the game originally. Terrible, terrible idea. But it sold well.
Yeah, it sold well. It was the rebirth of like, I think a lot of people gave it, like, they forgave the erroneous nature of it. They're like, oh, they're rebooting it and whatever. It's a shell. Yeah, maybe they did push it to release too quickly, but it looks great.
Incredible graphics,
and the music's there, and the feeling of Star Wars is there. But, after what was kind of a failed launch of the initial title, when the second one came out, and there were, like, the really bad microtransaction and loot box problems, like, there was no saving grace.
Yeah.
They had years to work on it.
It's true. And most people really didn't like the fact that there wasn't a single-player experience in the original one. So when they made Part 2, they put in a single-player experience, which many people have mixed feelings about. I know a lot of people that like it. I know a lot of people that don't. Personally, I thought it was neat. I just didn't think it was the greatest story in the world. Regardless, that's a personal opinion. It was still there. It was content that they built and they put into the game. But then there was loot crates and loot cards or whatever the heck they did. There was all these things that you had to buy. They screwed up so badly with that game that apparently the CEO of Disney had to call EA and go, "What are you doing? You're messing up our franchise." So a whole lot of problems happened in the Star Wars IP universe, okay? So it wasn't just that the game did bad, it was that a lot of things in the Star Wars universe did bad. They had a failure of a movie.
Yep.
I'm talking about the Han Solo film.
Yes.
That one did very badly. And then the latest film really upset a lot of people for an assortment of reasons. But even if you think the film was good, the majority of the people out there that watched it seemed to have issues with it, which caused a problem with a huge viewer base. So the entire Star Wars franchise is on rocky grounds right now, but the game should have been a win. All they had to do was take what they did in the first game, bring it over, give you more content, and then sell it, and that's it.
Right.
That's all they had to do, but they couldn't do that.
Yeah, they couldn't help themselves. Like I said when we started off this video, like EA, they make monetization platforms. That's what they do right now. That's all I see. They've had years with. I mean, they've had the Star Wars IP since 2013. They've had years to work and make several games or help publish several games, and we've seen nothing but this sort of egregious nature dripping into every single game that they release. They don't release story-driven Star Wars games when Star Wars is a story-driven series, as far as I'm concerned. We have one hope. Respawn is working on a Star Wars game. Respawn are the Titanfall folks. They're making Jedi Fallen Order. that could be canceled. I don't know. That's supposed to be a story-driven title.
Respawn's got like 2 years left until they get sold or set aflame. Are you kidding me?
Titanfall 2 didn't do well, but the campaign was really good.
Okay. Let's talk about that for a sec, okay, folks? Let me make this clear. Respawn Entertainment makes fantastic games. I'm to understand that EA rushed out the original Titanfall before they could have all the elements done.
Really?
Keeping that in mind.
Really? They do that?
They did that. Keep in mind, from what from my own experience, Titanfall 1 is an amazing game. It is really, really good. I didn't like the idea that you had to buy DLC packs and stuff like that. That kind of harmed the experience because they were going. This is a competition thing. They were directly going up against Call of Duty and stuff like that. So they did the exact same marketing or monetization tactics that they did. So of course you're not going to win because you're against a Titan. Okay, you're against a bigger person.
Pun intended?
Problem. Titanfall 2.
Yes.
They fixed that. The DLC packs are completely free, so anyone that gets the game will be able to play the stuff.
Yeah.
But it also had a single-player experience that most people out there, this is a very common thing, consider it one of the greatest single-player experiences in any of these mainstream first-person shooting games. That is amazing. I've only played a little bit of it. What I have played shows a huge marked improvement over the original. I have played a lot of Titanfall 2, and I really enjoy what is there. But keeping all that in mind, EA had to do something to mess it up. Do you know what they did?
Well, okay, I remember the biggest sort of. Well, maybe you have a bigger faux pas than me.
Maybe there's another faux pas.
It was the release date of Titanfall 2. That was one of the biggest issues because it was going up against some really heavy hitters.
It went up against their own Battlefield. You know what I mean? You put it up like I think it was like a week apart or whatever from Battlefield 1, I believe is what it was. You released it against your own first-person shooter franchise. EA, what were you thinking? That's the best way to destroy a franchise you're working on. Space that stuff out. Of course, there's so many more people out there that like the Battlefront or Battlefield series. They're going to want to play the next Battlefield series. So there was no reason for you to release Titanfall up against that because Titanfall hadn't established itself yet.
Yeah.
Plus, it's the original release of Titanfall was kind of weird. It didn't come out on the PlayStation 4. It didn't come out on the PlayStation 3. It didn't come out on the Wii U. What happened, though, was it came out on the Xbox One, which wasn't doing that great. Then it came out on the Xbox 360 later. So that kind of messed it up a bit. And it was on the PC the entire time, but the whole organization
also
was just nuts.
Having the sequel was cross-platform, wasn't it? Yeah. So there's some weirdness there too. It's people who were maybe Sony-only console owners maybe didn't want to jump on board with Titanfall 2 because they didn't
might not have known.
access to.
So it caused a huge fracture there, and they made it worse by releasing it when they did. This game doing bad is all EA's fault. If everyone out there that's playing the game is saying it's one of the best first-person shooters they've ever played with amazing online capabilities, amazing online gameplay, and a fantastic single player, the only one at fault is the publisher and the controller of the marketing.
So we're talking about EA as a publisher that makes a lot of mistakes with a lot of games, not just Star Wars, but we're talking about Titanfall as well. We've seen a lot of missteps. Do you feel like enough has happened that, because I did hear that Disney has maintained, like contractually, they can pull their IP from EA at any time.
You bet they can.
Do you feel like they should be doing it at this point?
I mean, look, if I was Disney, I would restart LucasArts, okay? That's what I would do. There were so many cool people. Oh, there were so many good ideas. There were so many cool people there. Look, reach out to some folks. Get some people that were from there originally. Hire some hardcore fans that have been working on those franchises independently, because there's a lot of people out there that keep LucasArts games running that are from the community, and those people understand those games. But there's a lot of people that worked at LucasArts that I guarantee you, if you were to start all that stuff up again, they would just go right back. But I don't know if they're going to do that.
Right.
That's wishful thinking.
No, I think that's way, way, way out there. But what I could kind of see is them maybe taking the IP and maybe sprinkling it on a few other development studios that could probably do justice to the Star Wars IP better. Like I can think of like several game styles I would love to see brought back, like the RTS, the old Galactic Battlegrounds games would be cool. I would love to see something that's more like a Dark Forces style of game.
I don't know if that can work. Here's something that I believe would be a very big issue. So Respawn making a new Star Wars game is a cool idea, and it may actually be a great game. The problem is that because EA is involved, they're likely going to do something to screw it up. They are the ones that have the problem. Respawn, I've got no doubt at all, could make a fantastic game. It's literally EA's involvement that causes these issues. And any defenders of EA out there, hey, that's great. I'm a big fan of EA from all the way back. I've been a fan of EA ever since Trip Hawkins started the company, okay? I know who these people are. I understand the company's history, and I have a gigantic collection of EA games. But it's what they do with the games now that are the big problem. Now, with that in mind, this is kind of where my biggest issue lies.
Okay.
If you were to take those franchises, the Star Wars franchise, and start giving it out to independent companies or companies all over to make their own Star Wars games, there is a big problem with that. And the problem is basically inconsistency. What made LucasArts so important was LucasArts would work with other companies to make games. And without a company like that that's catering and watching over the Star Wars franchise, making sure it's there every step of the way, that's where you get the issues with game development. See, most people don't remember this. Back when LucasArts was originally started, they couldn't make Star Wars games. Most people don't even remember that. They were making a whole bunch of point-and-click action adventures, like platforming games, just weird stuff. But good. They became a good developer before they got the Star Wars IP. Then when they actually started, when they got the ability to make Star Wars games, that's when they started making amazing games because they had a respect for it, because they were connected to that franchise. So if Disney were to create a group that watches over that stuff,
some sort of subsidiary that would take care of the multiple projects that would be going.
And there's no doubt in my mind that they have something like that now, but they need something that has a name brand to it. And LucasArts had that name brand. If you were to bring somebody into the mix that could control all that stuff, that understands what is needed from Star Wars and how to make those games work, that's where you would have the most success.
That would be interesting because I mean Disney has seen a lot of success with Marvel, and there's just one person,
Kevin
Feige. Yeah, Kevin Feige has been kind of the overlord. I don't want to put a negative sort of look on him, but he has been sort of in control of everything that's going on within the expanded universe. So if we did have someone that was so ingrained into the Star Wars sort of culture, all of the previous media, that could give love to whatever projects were being developed.
Right. So, okay, I'm not saying myself. Someone like me, I know every single Star Wars game that had ever been released. I've played every Star Wars game that had ever been released, including some really weird ones that most people didn't remember.
You play the Yoda one?
Oh, Yoda Stories?
The Yoda Stories?
I love Yoda Stories.
That's pretty
But
solid.
you know what I thought was really cool? Yoda Stories also had Indiana Jones, which was its own little pack. It was its own individual thing, and they were like Indiana Jones and desktop adventures. I don't even need Wikipedia. I know that stuff. It's up here. There's someone out there that's just like me who could sit there and control that stuff and make sure things are going the way they should be. And they can enforce principles and ideas that prevent companies from screwing up the IP too much. But this is the stuff that they're entrusting EA to do right now, which is not a smart move. I've got no doubt in my mind that there's someone at Disney that's doing something similar to this, but they, like I said, need to have a group, an identity. Not one person can do this stuff, but they need a group of folks that can control, and I think that's what they need. Bring back LucasArts. I know it's not going to be the exact same thing, but to have someone there to control those things, that's what I think matters the most right now.
Right. It doesn't have to be LucasArts in name. It just has to be the same sort of care that they were given to the properties way back when.
Yeah.
We were getting a lot of Star Wars games for a long time, and it seems like ever since EA took the helm of the Star Wars franchise, it's been a drip feed of, like I said before, monetization. So yeah, no, I would love to see someone in control and some developers that have maybe been working like. Bungie's free from Activision now. Bungie was basically making a Star Wars universe of their own.
Yeah.
Dude, throw Star Wars at Bungie. I would love to see what they do if they don't have to, listen to the heads of Activision, right?
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Talented.
You do something like that, it'll make a lot of sense. Look, there are a whole bunch of video games out there that LucasArts had made, but I want something to be hammered home that I don't think a lot of people really understand about what made LucasArts so good. Every Star Wars game they made was a little bit of a risk. It was a little bit of a gamble. They would create things that other people weren't doing. For instance,
Yoda Stories is a great example. It's
yeah.
weird. It's like a roguelike, right?
Yeah, it's like there's nothing else quite like that.
Yeah.
Here is something that you may not understand about the early stuff. We look back at the games they created now as being good games, but when the original Dark Forces game came out, the first one, most people out there played Doom or Wolfenstein, and all they were looking at was a run-around shooting game, maybe a couple key cards here and there. That game, Dark Forces, has puzzle elements in it. It's got narrative elements in it. It's got cutscenes.
Yes.
First-person shooters of the time period were not doing that. What they were trying to do was they were trying to take something that was established and worked and add to it and make more to it.
Right.
When you think about the original Battlefront 1 and Battlefront 2, they are very much trying to be Battlefield games at their core. That's the idea, but they expand the concept in Battlefront 2 by making giving you new kinds of formats of gameplay, but also by introducing space battles. This was different because it basically had to treat two different aspects of the world: internal world with physics where you're walking around and stuff like that, and then an external world where you could fly around anywhere you wanted in free space.
I would even argue that the first one was ahead of its time as far as like you being able to don the Jedi, whatever character that you really loved, and they had specific powers and abilities and things like that. And a lot of the inventiveness that you're talking about, the reboot of the series, it was just like plain Jane. Like there wasn't a lot of that inventiveness to it. They took a little bit of the prior formula and ditched a lot of the other stuff. So
in Rebel Assault 1 and Rebel Assault 2, okay, those games are basically kind of interactive movies to an extent.
I love Rebel Assault 2.
Okay,
Rebel Assault 2 is so good.
They're not just interactive movies. There's interactive elements to them that kind of expand as you play. And what's really cool about them is that with Rebel Assault 2, they wanted to try and do something so different. So they wrote a script, they hired actors, and they shot full sequences, and they actually used costumes from the original Star Wars movies that were left in storage for years, and that's a gamble. That's something no one else had ever done before.
And the gameplay, as you were saying, is a gamble as well. There were flying sequences, there were on-foot sequences, there were like third-person shooting sequences and stuff. Yeah.
All we're trying to say here is that this game getting canceled, it's a good thing, it's a bad thing. It's just bad that EA is involved, and I firmly believe that EA should not be involved with the Star Wars franchise anymore, or the IP, and Disney should find a way to fix that.
We could possibly have 4 more years of EA in control of this IP, because their contract was for 10 years, and it was from 2013.
Hey, Disney, if you're watching...
Get on this, man!
Yeah, if you...
Hey, Mouse!
if you, for whatever reason, want to hire us to run a new version of LucasArts, or maybe just hire someone else that actually used to run LucasArts, there's quite a few of them out there that are still making amazing games, go do that, because the thing you're doing right now really doesn't work at all.